From WCAX, this is You Can Quote Me.
Thanks for joining us for this special edition of You Can Quote Me. I'm Celine McArthur.
And I'm Galen Etlin. We're digging deeper into Vermont's opioid crisis and the impact it's having on mothers and their babies.
A 24-year-old woman addicted to heroin.
Way more powerful than anything else in the world.
Locked up, scared, and 9 months pregnant.
I've been crying for days. I can't stop.
Her family desperate to hold on to her second baby, born dependent on drugs.
DCF wants to step in and take custody of the baby. It's the one thing that's going to tear her apart.
Miranda Sevene isn't alone. The number of women in the U.S. giving birth while addicted to opioids more than quadrupled between 1999 and 2014.
The CDC says Vermont has the highest rate, nearly 49 cases of opioid use disorder for every 1,000 babies born.
The Vermont Department of Health disputes that, claiming about 28 cases for every 1,000 births, which is down from 2015.
But either way, Vermont is above the national trend, and this puts a huge burden on the state's welfare system.
The number of children under 3 in the care of the Department of Children and Families, another family member, or a foster family has increased every year since 2012.
They have an incredibly difficult job. I think if you talk to any practitioner in the family court system, they feel overwhelmed right now. It's a system that is definitely overworked, and it is an incredibly taxing system because DCF certainly is looking out for the best interest of everybody.
And Miranda's personal story is unfolding now.
This is what's happening to keep other women from following her lead.
42-year-old Amy Rawling is all smiles while serving up breakfast at the Bellows Fall Diner in Windham County.
I just love people. I love having a job where I can work and I can talk and listen. I love it. It's the best.
Amy's a single mother of 4, and today her 22-year-old daughter Kyla stops in with her baby Sam to say hello. In this moment, you wouldn't know this family is in crisis. Kyla's big sister, Miranda.
My daughter's a heroin addict. My daughter was a heroin dealer. Well, she's in jail, 9 months pregnant, ready to have a baby, alone, in a strange place, without us, without her family.
Miranda is in federal custody at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility in South Burlington.
I try not to cry. That's all I do. Because I messed up.
In late 2017, police arrested Miranda for dealing heroin. In early 2018, she pleaded guilty and was released on condition she completes a drug treatment program. She got pregnant soon after and stayed sober for 7 months with the help of the maintenance drug Suboxone before relapsing.
So I ended up using drugs the weekend before I went to court, and they gave me another chance, and I went to rehab, and then I got to go home, and then I messed up, and I'm back here.
On Christmas Day 2018, at nearly 9 months pregnant, she did heroin.
What went through your mind that day, knowing that you were 9 months pregnant?
I don't know, I just had I was like, there's no excuse for doing it at all. It's just my escape to when I get stressed out and overloaded.
This is going to be Miranda's second baby born addicted to drugs. 3 years ago, she had Braylee May.
She ended up detoxing, so they had to rush her over to Dartmouth and put her in the NICU. And they weaned her down on morphine over like a month-and-a-half period of time. And I got to take her home after.
Scared me to death. Scared me to death. It was different because I was never sure if she was using drugs.
She was using drugs, so her sister Kyla stepped in and ultimately adopted Braylee.
It was hard. It was hard to support both of them. It was hard. You know, support my daughter who's giving up her daughter for the best to her other one to support her. It's very tough. She has her mom, Kyla, and then she has Miranda. She's got enough love.
Miranda says it is hard to watch her daughter call Kyla mommy, but she appreciates the value of this lifeline.
Thank you for taking care of my child for me, because I couldn't. and being a mom that I couldn't.
The future of Miranda's second child is unclear. Will DCF and the courts grant her one more chance? Miranda thinks her mom will get custody. Mom isn't so sure.
I'm supposed to take the baby home, and how do I tell my daughter that that might not be happening? That's what breaks my heart.
While DCF and the courts consider options for Miranda and her baby, we get legal perspective in the recovery process.
Vermont's Attorney General and Miranda's lawyer share their thoughts.
Folks who are struggling with addiction deserve treatment, deserve a path back to our community, deserve to parent, and deserve to raise their children. At the same time, we have to balance that with public safety and making sure that kids are safe.
The more we understand about the process of addiction, the more that we appreciate the seriousness of the circumstances here in Vermont in 2019, the better equipped we are going to be to try and make progress.
Helping a loved one struggling with addiction can be overwhelming.
Where do you start? Who do you call? If this is uncharted territory for you, like it is for Amy, it can leave you feeling hopeless.
I thought she was a normal 18-year-old. You know, going out with friends, hanging out. She had a boyfriend. Everything was normal. And then I got a phone call. She had been arrested for possession of heroin in Massachusetts. My heart broke. It's not the life I wanted my daughter to have. I'd love to be able to give everything and make everything better and make everything perfect, but I can't do that. I'm not educated in that area.
Amy is desperate to help her daughter Miranda keep her baby and regain her freedom.
Shortly after that first report, Miranda went into labor.
You're the cutest thing. You feeling good? We're gonna have a baby today.
A mother and daughter sharing a personal moment, both excited but also afraid of what will happen once the baby is born. What you can't see in the cell phone video are the guards standing outside the UVM hospital room door.
Miranda is a federal detainee right now, so no family. I did get permission. I got permission from them to be there for her when the birth happens, but that's it.
Hours later, it happened.
You did it! You're amazing!
Miranda gave birth to her baby girl.
You did amazing.
For 2 hours, grandmother, mother, and baby were at peace. Then reality struck. Miranda is a federal prisoner, and Amy's visiting hours were over. Amy shared with me how painful it was to walk away as she left the hospital.
12:40, 2 hours after birth, and I'm leaving my daughter in the hospital, alone with 2 guards. Her name is Eliana Grace Sevene. Everything about her is perfect. She's amazing. I have to leave her here in this strange place with nobody. Words can't explain the pain I'm feeling right now and that she must be feeling. She won't be able to call me for a few days. I don't have any idea what's going on.
Miranda spent 2 days with Eliana before she was sent back to the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. The Department of Children and Families awarded Amy's sister Jeanette temporary custody of Eliana until Miranda's federal case is over.
You know, it's just a difficult situation.
No cameras are allowed inside the federal courtroom, but this is the 3-page letter Miranda wrote and read before the judge.
You've got somebody who has committed a crime. She was very clear about accepting responsibility. So it's a question of getting over the opiate addiction, being given a chance to be reunited with the baby, and hopefully turning a corner.
Judge William Sessions told Miranda she'd be sentenced to time served, followed by 3 years of probation, as long as she successfully completes the residential drug rehab program at Lund Family Center in Burlington for new mothers and their babies. The only problem? No available beds.
Most young women who are pregnant, who are planning to go to Lund, who are accepted at Lund, have several months worth of advance notice, if you will. In her case, this all came on rather quickly. We have a pretty good sense that it's going to be within the next 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Until then, Miranda will remain behind bars.
We just didn't feel comfortable releasing her under circumstances in which something bad could happen between leaving the courthouse and reporting to Lund.
For her family, that decision is very upsetting.
It's a
I wanted her to come home. So.
Do you miss her?
Yeah. A lot.
She's lost 2.5 weeks of bonding time, and now it could be another 2.5 weeks where if she was home. She could have had that. She could have spent days with her.
Days later, a spot opens up at Lund, and the judge agrees to let her go.
So, and this time when I leave her, I'm not going to leave crying sad. I'm going to be leaving her happy.
No handcuffs, no shackles, no uniform. A free woman.
So you have a level of freedom today that you haven't had in a while.
It feels great. And the probation, it's like a security thing for me. It keeps me accountable for my actions and other things that could happen down the road, that I always have that resource and the help there.
What's your biggest fear?
Relapse.
But you have a plan.
Yep.
You want the Vivitrol?
I want the Vivitrol. I've got Lund, which is got tons of resources. They help you with many things. I got my probation officer, which will be supportive as well and hold me accountable for things when I start slipping.
You have quite a support system.
I do. I'm lucky.
How excited are you to be reunited with your baby?
I'm overly excited. I cannot wait. It'll be nice to be able to have her, not just see her for a couple hours, or to be able to just be a mom and be an adult that I should be.
As our series continues, we'll take you inside Lund to show Miranda's progress.
Up next, a panel of experts, political, legal, and recovery, weigh in on the crisis. In our first segment, we introduced you to Miranda Sevene, a 24-year-old woman struggling with a heroin addiction to such a degree that she nearly lost her second child and her freedom.
But she's been given another chance after facing federal charges for dealing heroin. As part of her sentence, she has to get help. She's at Lund, a residential drug treatment center in Burlington, where she can have her baby with her. Thank you for staying here with us for the special edition of You Can Quote Me. I'm Galen Etlin.
And I'm Celine McArthur. Joining us to talk about our series and the state of the opioid crisis in Vermont are Joanne Nelson from Mercy Connections.
We also have Mayor Merle Weinberger of Burlington, who's been focusing on taking on the drug crisis.
And our legal resident expert, Jerry O'Neill, former U.S. prosecutor. First reactions to the special so far.
I thought it was great. I thought it dealt with very difficult issues. That question of what you do with women in particular, and a woman who is pregnant, how do you deal with it? How do you help her move forward on it? I thought it put that forth very well.
I was deeply moved by the woman and her profile and her family support, and I recognized in her many of the people that I see on a daily basis in Burlington at Mercy Connections.
I thought you really showed us just what this crisis means to the lives of so many Vermonters, and how and people who are suffering from this opioid use disorder go through ups and downs and experience setbacks.
It is amazing to see it through that lens, isn't it?
Now, we've been getting a lot of responses from our viewers on social media especially, so we're hoping to get some of your take on their comments. The first one here from Amy. She says, too bad not everyone gets these deals. I guess federal court versus state court maybe. There aren't enough resources in Vermont to address this issue. I've seen the system fail miserably. Wish they offered this to all moms or pregnant women as a condition of release. Jerry O'Neill, this might be a good place to start for you. What is that difference between, say, maybe the federal process and maybe where are those imbalances?
In a nutshell, it's money. The federal system has the resources. It has the money. It's got the funding. It's got more probation officers. It has more ability to supervise. It has a lot smaller caseload, so it can pay much closer attention to each individual who comes before it. The state just doesn't have the funds to provide the support that the federal government does.
So for her, she will be able to have, for her 3 years of probation, she will be able to get the treatment that she needs, including Lund, which isn't cheap.
And she's going to get supervised release. I mean, there are probation officers, and they're good, hardworking people in the state system, but the reality is they have much higher caseloads. They don't have the resources to make available to someone in her situation. That's just totally different as compared to what she's going to have because she's in the federal system.
Now, how important do you think, all of you, do you think it is to have all of those resources, to have all of those sort of experts keeping an eye on you throughout your entire process of recovery?
Very, very important. I mean, people like Miranda, before they even show up at the the correctional facility. They've been survivors of sexual abuse, physical abuse. They have maybe lower socioeconomic backgrounds. They are underskilled. A lot of them are single, unmarried mothers, and they have all kinds of issues that they really need to be supported on. So every single one of those resources is critical.
I think it's really important whenever we talk about this that people realize by far the most critical step is that first step of people getting access into and starting medically assisted treatment.
And you bring up a good point, which is our next viewer who said, Melissa, she says, this is ludicrous. If they didn't immediately have openings, they should have roomed her in the hospital with her baby until a room opened at Lund. The baby needs maternal contact. This is cruel and it's damaging to sever the relationship. One of the things when we launched the series to begin with, the family's from Bellows Falls. And they said that was one of the things they realized is that there were not a lot of resources around the state, so they had to come up to Chittenden County to get services.
Well, we've worked very hard here in this coalition that we call the Chittenden County Opioid Alliance, and through these monthly meetings we call Community Stat, to get all the different stakeholders that have one role or another in facing this epidemic, working together, focused on the data, focused on the science, and really we've been laser focused on bringing down deaths related to opioid overdoses. We are very encouraged and hopeful to see the opioid deaths fall from 35 to 17 from 2017 to 2018. It's still way too many. There's a lot more to do. And it shouldn't be that you have to travel from all these other counties in Vermont to Chittenden County to get to the one syringe exchange, for example, that's open 40 hours a week.
The person who wrote in talked about keeping her in the hospital for this period of time. It's a great idea. I'd love to see it possible. Difficulty is that she's in custody. Being in custody, that means you have to have people there 24 hours a day, at least 2 people a day with her 24 hours a day. If there's a means to get her out into the community during that period of time, that's great. But if not, you're going to have to take a look at what the resource is going to be to permit that to occur.
In some states, there are mother and child programs built right into prison systems. We don't have that in Vermont. We're a very rural state, and I see it every day. Women are released from the correctional facility at the state level to different parts of this rural state, and they cannot be connected to, for example, mentoring programs that are gender-informed and really effective.
Getting to the stigma, we got a lot of comments criticizing Miranda and some of the choices that she's made along the way. Stacy here says, why should we care now for her when it's obvious that she didn't care for her baby in the first place? Sympathy is for people who deserve it. She clearly doesn't. If she wanted that baby to begin with, she would have changed her ways way before having that child. So kind of strong words there. Joanne, maybe starting with you here, because you work with women from all walks of life going through challenges with the law, incarceration. What's your take when people fire off a comment like that one?
I'm not sure any among us as human beings haven't made bad choices. I know for sure that one of the reasons that I have not been incarcerated and I don't have substance abuse is probably because of all the resources I've had my whole life and people who have supported me and my access to having my basic human needs met. And that's how I kind of would approach that. So I don't think there's any use in telling that person they're all wrong. I want to listen, and I want to maybe draw them in and have them be part of the solution. And that's the only way we're going to do this, is if we work together.
So we do have another one here from T.A. Jerry. He says, people should have to qualify to have kids in today's society. Sounds crazy, but again, some harsh words here. This loser addict giving birth to what essentially is a victim of the mom's drug choices is BS. So what can we get out of this? Again, this is one of those sort of harsh social media comments. We don't know if this person has an insight into the direct impact of the crisis or not, but working with people from all walks of life, again, how would you address something like this?
Drug choices is the phrase in there that jumps out at me. I mean, there comes a point in time when perhaps someone starts perhaps they had an orthopedic injury and they had prescribed medications. There's a point in time not too long into that when choice disappears, and it's the craving, it is there. And all of us are fortunate not to have had that experience. But for someone to judge that person and say that's their choice, yes, in theory it is. In reality, for many of the people, it's not really a choice. They're not able to give it up any more than alcoholics give up alcohol.
And it was difficult for the family. The first day, they opened themselves up to us, they shared their story, and there was, bad comment, bad comment, bad comment. For them watching you, the three of you, and who might get ready to get on the internet again and say something like that, what would you say to people like that?
Think about whether or not you would say it face to face with someone versus sitting behind a keyboard by yourself somewhere and launching it out there. Because many of the people get a deal of pleasure from being able to anonymously attack people, where if they had to sit down and talk with somebody, would they feel that same way?
And there's a lot of layers to it. And so only one layer, I think, is this idea that you have failed as a human being to become addicted.
I would encourage anyone who has that kind of reaction to talk to their friends and families and ask around a little bit about what their people that they respect and love, what kind of experiences they have had. I think when people ask around and become better educated, maybe read a book like Dope Sick or Graceland, they'll have a much greater understanding that we need to have sympathy for people who are suffering like Miranda.
Hoping to get all of your perspective on this, where do you think there's a gap in knowledge of the public in your individual work in tackling this crisis?
I think the gap consists of people thinking that the money that's being spent on this is wasted money, these are bad people. In reality, you don't have to like the people, but what you have to realize is that the money that the government spends on this in the long term saves money because of the disabilities, the deaths, all those other aspects of it. It's great to care about the people. I hope everyone does, but if they don't, just look in their wallet. They'll save money by having good programs.
I'm not sure anyone's ever seen what it's like to be inside a jail, how your freedom is taken away, and how you're probably serving your time just in that regard.
I find that there's still way too much stigma out there about these life-saving medicines, methadone and buprenorphine. A lot of people continue to see these as kind of maintenance drugs that are almost like heroin in themselves, and that people need to get off of them as quickly as they can, and that leads to a lot of really unfortunate and tragic situations. Buprenorphine needs to be thought of as something like insulin for a diabetic patient, a medicine that this person is likely going to need to be on for a sustained period of time, perhaps even the rest of their lives, if they are going to get healthy and stay healthy.
There's no debate that we need more education about the dangers of these drugs, what it can do to you, and what can happen to you in your life. Specifically, what would you include in an educational program for kids? What would you include in order to make that education work? And really, how young would you start?
I would find someone who really knew what they were talking about, at what level to bring it in, because there are a number of programs that have been tried. For example, not in Vermont, but the program that was tried in one place was taking kids into prisons, exposing them to prisons as to what it would be like. 100% failure. There's no success as compared to kids who didn't participate in the program in connection with it. So I don't know what the answer is, because you really need someone who has thoroughly studied that and understands it, not just simply gut reactions, but what really is proven to work.
There are some great resources online. The state of Vermont has this. I believe the website is called Parent Up. That's a place that people can go if they're trying to figure out how to talk to their own kids about this. And I, talked to my own 13-year-old. I certainly have found that kids are able to engage in those middle school years, and I think it's important that people do that.
If I can ask one more question, where should the series go next? We're watching Miranda, we're watching Amy, we're watching the family go through the process. What do you think is important?
There's a huge component of this that's not visible to most people, but the number of women who are involved in using drugs who have been in some respect trafficked sexually is tremendous. You wouldn't think we have that problem in Vermont. We have that problem in Vermont. Women being trafficked here, being trafficked going down to places like New York and the likes of that. I don't know if you can find a way to get a story on that, to get into the people who are involved in it. If you could, your viewers would find some things they would find incredibly disturbing.
Working on that now, and it is challenging. It is challenging, just like it is here to find people who are willing to share their stories. But this has been a great conversation.
We so appreciate you all for being here and lending that perspective.
Thank you for your...
When they're playing with these types of drugs, they're playing with the future of their lives.
Up next, a final take from Senator Bernie Sanders. As we leave you here, we give Senator Bernie Sanders the final word.
And he says, you can quote me.
So the first question we have to ask is, why is it that so many people are turning to opioids to escape the pain of life. If you are struggling and you need a counselor, you should be able to get that counselor when you need him or her.
And we profiled a 24-year-old woman who's had 2 children struggling with her addiction to heroin and fentanyl, and she's down in Bellows Falls, and their biggest struggle is that there are no resources for them down in that area.
All right. In this area, the Congress is moving. We have put many, many billions of dollars, some of which is coming to New Hampshire and to Vermont, to begin that treatment process. But at the end of the day, we are going to need a lot more counselors. We need a lot more psychologists. We need a lot more prevention efforts.
Do you think there also needs to be a focus on education for young people, understanding the dangers?
Absolutely. That's a good point. When I was a kid, when the word heroin came out, everybody knew that was a killer drug. And I am not sure that a lot of young people understand how addictive and how dangerous heroin and opioids in general are. This is not something you play around with. Oh boy, I'm going to get high once or twice. This is stuff that is extremely addictive, and once you get hooked up on that, this is very tough stuff to get rid of. So I just hope and pray that young people do not fall into this out of ignorance. Understand this is terribly serious stuff, which will dramatically cause you pain in life.
How do we improve the education, though? Because there aren't any plans in the state of Vermont specifically. I mean, there's a spirit to educate the students, but nothing specific about heroin and fentanyl and this new generation of very powerful drugs.
Right. I think, we have to explain that to the kids, that when they're playing with these types of drugs, they're playing with the future of their lives, and the outcome is addiction or maybe death.